Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
That's appropriate.
Hello, Rhonda. And
hello,
Kyle.
David. I'm sorry I interrupted you. Hello. And welcome everyone to episode 324, which is our part 2 on dating and overcoming the pain of a breakup and rejection. So, shall we just dive in?
Let's dive in.
Okay. I thought I'd start with an endorsement that's kind of generic, this was on episode 3, which was for the beginning of the podcast that you did with Fabrice Nye. And this episode is on empathy. Does it really make a difference? And Safira wrote you and said, I'm so pleased that with each podcast, I'm learning new and better ways to handle situations and how changing the negative thought process affects the way I hear and interpret what other people are actually saying versus how I interpret what is being said. It's so helpful for my self-confidence and lessening my fear of being around people in social settings. I can't wait to listen to your next podcasts and all the other ones. And that was from Safira. So it's fun when people go back and listen to the older podcasts and write us.
Oh yeah, there's lots of gold in those.
Yeah, definitely.
Old podcasts.
Okay, so we're going to dive into our next question, and this is about cheating. And here's the question. Do you have any tips for moving on and realizing that maybe your ex isn't as great as you think they are?
And firsties to use, guys.
Okay.
Rhonda, I think you have some good thoughts here. You start.
Well, Kyle and I were talking about, taking some time away, having some patience, taking some space from each other. And I like the form that we've titled, or David has titled, 20 Qualities in an Ideal Mate. And you write down all of the qualities that you want to have in an ideal mate for yourself. And then, so make that list of qualities and then look at that and compare that. I mean, comparisons are odious, but it's helpful. Make this list and see, did your ex have, how many of these qualities did your ex have, and how many qualities did you wish were different? And, maybe that could be a bit of a reality check. And
can I give a couple more details on that tool?
Please do.
Yeah, you can find it in Intimate Connections, and it's a great tool. And when you make the qualities I'm looking for in an ideal mate, you choose things like number 1 should always be availability, because someone who's available might be more desirable than someone like a famous movie star or Mick Jagger or someone who's not available.
You can actually talk to and connect with.
Yeah, and that's right. And then you could have common values and sexy and the right age range and all whatever you value. And there's a form for listing your 20 qualities, and then you rate your ex on each of those qualities from 0 to 5. 5 being, the top rating and 0 being the worst. And so right off the bat on, availability, that person's probably a 0 since they're not available. And then you can rate, you can see their strengths and weaknesses and get a total score, which will go from 0 to 100. And then you can rate people you're dating right now. a number of people you've dated in the past. And it is so interesting because often people who you thought, like an ex you thought was so wonderful, maybe doesn't have such a high score, maybe only 55 or 60 out of 100. And somebody else who maybe you're thinking that person isn't nearly as awesome as my ex might have a substantially higher score. And it helps you get in touch with the reality, because when somebody dumps you, there's a tendency to get involved in positive distortions, idealizing them, thinking there's something better than mashed potatoes or McDonald's French fries or whatever. And then when you see, gosh, that person did have a lot of great qualities, but a lot of qualities that I'm looking for, that the ratings weren't so high. And then you can also have a number system for what does a person's score have to be, say, to date them once, to date them several times, to date them really seriously, or to get married. And Aaron Beck used to say, if you can find someone with a 65 or better, marry them immediately.
65.
So it's really a fun tool, and a tool that can be very, very helpful and very eye-opening.
Yeah, I love that.
I love it.
It's almost like a version of examine the evidence. It's like, oh wait, this ex that I was dating, they stayed out late and were drinking, and then they didn't return my phone calls, and I asked them to hang out, and they just ignored me, and they needed me to bring them things all the time. I was giving them rides. Oh wait a second.
Exactly.
this sort of person that I'm so heartbroken over and fantasizing about how great they are, they actually weren't that great.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. What's the next question here?
So we're done with that one? Okay. Since cheating is something that happens so often in relationships, what would you recommend technique-wise for someone who's been cheated on to try to get their confidence back?
Oh yeah, it's just a bummer. My first thought, right? It really sucks. It can be devastating if you're depending on sort of I guess how far along the relationship is. If you're just dating someone for a few months, and then, or if you're married and have kids or something, and you value monogamy and that's sort of the expectation that you've been operating under, and someone steps out of the relationship, it's just devastating, to be kind of, you feel betrayed and hurt and angry, and, maybe you start to question and doubt yourself and doubt the past, all of it. So I think there's a lot of good work that can be done just there, right? In identifying kind of your negative thoughts about yourself, about the world, about the future. I think that's a great place to start. If that's what you're wanting to do. I think it's also perfectly fine to just, if you've been cheated on and you've been betrayed, I think you're allowed to feel kind of some negative feelings there. And then when you're ready, you can identify some of your negative thoughts that you might want to start to talk back to.
I'm thinking that you're probably labeling yourself unlovable or undesirable. And when there are negative thoughts that include the distortion of labeling, I like the technique worst best average, where let's say you have the label I'm unlovable, or no one will want me again, or I'm not sexy enough, or whatever the label is. And then you come up with the opposite thought, like a more positive thought, like I am lovable, or I am sexy, or I am desirable. And then come up with 5 qualities of a person who has that positive label. And then ask yourself, when at my worst, on a scale of 0 to 100, how often do I have, how much do I have that quality? At my best, how much do I have that quality on a scale of 0 to 100? And on average in my life, how often do I have that? And then really take a look at that, and you'd be surprised at how often, your average and your best, you have the qualities that you're worried that you don't have. so frequently. And then I think you added to that, like, what can you do then to put an action plan to pick one of those 5 positive qualities and kind of put it into action, that you work on improving yourself, or what action plan can you take so that you have that quality even more?
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's super helpful. David, what are your thoughts? Someone's cheated on you and you're trying to get your confidence back.
Yeah, I won't give a long answer to this, but there's a lot of tools that we use in team therapy that can be helpful. Being cheated on could never upset a human being. Only your thoughts about it can upset you. Mm-hmm. So if you use the daily mood log and write down your negative thoughts, the ones causing anger, the ones causing hopelessness, the ones causing anxiety, shame, inadequacy, loneliness, and so forth, then you'll see that's the real cause. You're upsetting yourself, not that other person. What kind of messages are you giving yourself? And then you can you can do your positive reframing with those negative thoughts and feelings on the daily mood log, and then you can challenge the negative thoughts with the double standard technique, the downward arrow technique. You'll come to the fear of being alone, a fear of rejection, self blame, overgeneralization. You can use examine the evidence, as you mentioned, Kyle. You can use the double standard technique. Would you say these things to a friend who's been rejected, and who's been cheated on? And a lot of times people go out of the frying pan into the fire. You see, you'll probably be blaming yourself, and mm-hmm. I'm no good, and I'm not sexy enough, and that type of thing. And then to overcome it, a lot of people go to the opposite extreme. They go to other blame and say, no, it's not that I'm a loser. Yeah. He's a loser, or she's a loser. And then you go from despair to anger, and neither one is a very happy solution to the thing. But, if you want to have a relationship that's open and where you can have sex with whoever you want, some people have that kind of relationship and it works for them. And if you don't want that kind of relationship, then, look at the 20 qualities I'm looking for in an ideal mate. And is somebody who's cheating on you, is that some real highly desirable quality that you're yearning for?
Yeah. When you value monogamy.
Yeah. So
probably not.
I used to work at Family Court Services, which is the agency connected to the court when people getting divorced and they come for mediation to help work with their kids, to help figure out what their plans are for their kids. And I used to say that I could tell within 20 seconds if somebody had been cheated on because of the level of intensity of their emotion. And one time this couple came in, and indeed the husband had an affair, and the wife was just so calm about it. And she was like, and it was exactly because her thoughts. And I asked her, like, what do you, how can you be so calm about this? Most people who are cheated on feel, are really angry and come in so bitter and betrayed. And she said, well, he chose somebody else. And she was like, it's okay. He chose somebody else. And that's his choice. And that's okay with me. I thought, it was such a great lesson in how your thoughts can affect your feelings for me.
Yeah, so she didn't clearly have any of those distorted thoughts about herself, or was engaging in a lot of other blame or anything like that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, what's number 8?
So how can we boost our confidence back up? It's sort of the same question after a breakup in general, even if we haven't been cheated on. So I imagine there's some of those same answers that we gave previously.
Yeah, my answer would be the same. You do a daily mood log, write down what are your feelings, what are your negative thoughts, take do positive reframing. See, do would you like to change the way you think and feel, or maybe not? Maybe some negative feelings are appropriate. How upset do you want to feel? How sad between 0 and 100? How anxious between 0 and 100? And then if you want to improve the way you're thinking and feeling, choose the thought, and identify the distortions in it. There's, like it's all my fault. I'm unlovable. I'll be alone forever. I'm that, and you'll find that's self-blame, emotional reasoning, fortune telling, mind reading, discounting the positive, all or nothing thinking, overgeneralization, hidden should statements, tons of distortions. And then you can take any one of those thoughts and come up with a list of 5, 10, 15, 20 techniques for smashing it. If that's what you want to do, if you'd like to change the way you think and feel.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Do you guys believe in the notion that you're capable of healing completely from your ex, also known as completely being over them and all the pain the breakup brought you? Or do you believe that is not possible?
Well, I can give a my quick answer.
Yeah,
Okay,
David,
okay.
what do you think?
Well, that's just well, I shouldn't use strong language. That's just a typical, massively distorted hopelessness thought.
Yeah.
And you can heal much more than completely. You can go into a state of enlightenment and be glad that you got rid of the person.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's my brief answer.
Well,
Rhonda, what do you think?
I mean, why do you want to be the same? You're never going to be exactly the same after you've experienced anything. Every experience in life gives you, I know this is a cliche, but every experience in life gives you the opportunity to grow or change. I mean, maybe you need, again, maybe you need to acknowledge and examine your role in the breakup so that you don't repeat it. Maybe you have to come to a place of humility or maybe even compassion. But I think definitely come to a place of understanding. I mean, you could do an interpersonal downward arrow to look at the rules and roles in your relationship, or a relationship journal to see how you contributed to the relationship problems. Or maybe you could do like a reattribution, which is kind of a challenging technique where you look and see what you contributed to the relationship problems, and if you can be objective what they did, so that you can examine what happened in the relationship and move on to the next one, with a clear understanding of what happened, so you don't repeat the same mistakes.
What are some of the mistakes that people make in relationships? Because if you overgeneralize and say, well, the like a young woman came to me and her relationship of 2 years broke up. And I think you may recall this, Kyle, if we were teaching together at the time, I'm not sure. But then she had the thought, I must be unlovable. And that's that overgeneralization to yourself. And that's the cause of all depression. It's impossible to be depressed without that type of overgeneralization, going from a specific negative event to some projection to all of the future. I'll always be alone, and to yourself, I'm unlovable.
Yeah.
And then in working with her, we focused, instead of that vague generalities which create suicidal feelings and worthlessness feelings and intense loneliness. You have many fantastic qualities, but maybe there are some things specific things that you're doing that push people away. And so if you can focus on those things and work on those things, and not only does your dating life becomes much more robust, but your mood changes dramatically. And what we found with her, what was that one of her positive qualities can also be a bit of a negative. She's very enthusiastic about things, and she loves making plans with people and looking forward to things. But she sometimes assumes that other people are in on the plans when they're not.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, she might say to a friend, "Oh, let's go to Vancouver. There's going to be a great rock concert there and this other event, and we can do it over spring break." And the other person kind of appears to be happy about it, but maybe inwardly isn't that excited. And then she'd go ahead and make plans and, reservations in hotels. And then when she finds out at the last minute, the other person actually doesn't want to go to Vancouver. And then it leads to frustration and her,
she kind of got ahead of herself.
Exactly. Yeah. And then when she stopped doing that and began to think of herself, I call it the queen bee phenomenon. When a woman begins to see herself not as a loser, but as a queen bee, as someone highly desirable, then men begin to see her in the same way. Or in the gay community, it's the same exact phenomenon. And I think once Kyle, when you began to see yourself too as hot, I probably shouldn't use those words, but let's face it, we're humans, right? We have
as desirable, as handsome.
Flesh, handsome and sexy and that type of thing. And once you see yourself as desirable rather than some worthless reject, then other people begin to see you that way too.
Yeah,
we create our own.
How that works.
Yeah,
exactly.
We create our own interpersonal reality, and so when you recovered from your breakup with your ex, Kyle, you became vastly more happy and powerful and than before.
I mean, it's so funny. It's not funny. I think it can be quite challenging if you struggle with this, thinking that you're no good or you don't have or you don't know what the right things to say are, or that you're unattractive or that you're, unlovable, and then if you're telling yourself this in the moment of being in a social situation where you're trying to, pick up on someone or date or even chat with them online or something, it's going to, just like you're saying, seep out and create this interpersonal reality where you do get rejected, if you're telling yourself this and that's how you think about yourself.
I might also, I gave a plug for my book, Intimate Connections, last show, and I'll do it again because we're talking sometimes in general terms or use this technique or use that technique. But Intimate Connection shows you how all these techniques work. It shows you how to flirt. What are the secrets of effective flirting? How should you dress? What specific things can you do to mend a broken heart? How do you get really close to people by being vulnerable? What do you do when they back off? How do you crush your distorted thoughts? And it's not my best book. It's probably my least good of maybe the 5 or 10 or 12 books I've published. But it does something that none of the other books do. And I've had so many people, and it won't show you how to have a close relationship. It'll just show you how to make people chase you in unlimited numbers. And then once you find somebody who you like and they like you, and you want to develop a deeper relationship, then you need my book, Feeling Good Together, which is all about the 5 secrets of effective communication and how to develop a deep relationship. But I've had tons of people who said, Dr. Burns, thank you. I'm married now, or I found a partner because of after years of loneliness and rejection, because of your book, Intimate Connections. And it's the secrets I learned when, I learned how to hustle, you might say, from Michael. And people say, oh, that's awful. I don't want to hustle. I don't want to be like that. Well, you don't have to be like that unless you want to get laid and find people to love and have a joyous life and a family and children and grandchildren and so forth. But, I used to give the example that you have to learn to dance. And birds, that's what they do when they want to mate. They do whatever little dance thing, or butterflies do a certain
with their feathers, you know. And
with their feathers, butterflies have to fly in a particular way, and you have to learn to play those games and be willing to play those games. And if you refuse to play those games, there's a kind of arrogance to this. And I saw this more in single men than in single women, although that was just an impression. But if you have to be willing to do so. That's what I had to do, and I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to give up my sincerity and my niceness, because I've been so believed that was the way to find love. And there is a lot to be said for vulnerability and warmth and openness. But when I kind of gave up some of that and become a little more of a bad boy and a little more of a rascal, suddenly women were interested in me for the first time. It totally blew my mind. And there's a lot of very deep learning in areas, that might be somewhat shocking to people, because the way most people think about dating isn't the way it really is. I'm just babbling, so I'll shut up.
No, I think you brought up a good point. I think, just to the listeners out there who think they're going to be prescribed to, rascalness forever. I think David's point from earlier, I forget, maybe the previous podcast, right? There's phases. You're in the sort of the game playing phase or the emotional intimacy phase, right? And you're sort of your niceness and your vulnerability and your ability to be empathic and thoughtful and concerned. There's a time and a place for that when you kind of move into that phase of a relationship with someone.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're just relying on that and just sort of chasing and being clingy and confessing your undying love, it's just going to force people to reject you when you're in the game playing phase, when you're trying to do the dance,
Yeah. And one of the things that Michael did when he took me under his wing is we went over to, the men's department in Bloomingdale's, and he showed me how to, because I just looked crappy, and I thought, well, women should like me the way I am. Give me an effing break, as the Buddha said so often. Why should they? Really, he always looked just gorgeous. He looked like a male model or something like that, or a lollipop. I think he looked like a male lollipop to women, and he got me, flashy shirts and totally matching. He said everything has to match. Your slacks have to match your shirt, and the belt, the underpants, the socks, the shoes.
Some style.
Yeah, have some style. And when I went walking around the Stanford Shopping Center the first time, I was wearing. He made me get a really fancy haircut. And you've got to treat yourself like you're special, and believe in yourself. And then I noticed, gosh, women were looking at me for the first time, and it was like a jolt to the system. And so that was one of the things I did when I was in clinical practice. I had so many men who were lonely and didn't know how to get dates, and I said, well, the way you look is so important. And have you thought about, changing your appearance a little bit? And they'd say, oh, no, women should love me the way I am. And then I would say, well, what kind of woman are you looking for? And they would describe someone like a Playmate model or a guy who would be looking for this handsome, studly, gentleman's quarterly model type of guy. And I'd say, well, that's other people are that way too. So why should someone be attracted to you? You look like shit. And I said, but you're basically a good-looking, cool guy. And then, I've mentioned this before, but I had this person who worked at the King of Prussia Plaza, Kaneko Finkelstein, and she worked in Bloomingdale's in the men's department, and she was a genius with men's clothing. Yeah. And she could put together these total outfits the same way Michael McCabe did. And she could make anybody look like a stud. And I said, if you want me to help you with dating, you've got to go to Kaneko Finkelstein and tell her that your Dr. Burns referred you to her for a sex uniform. And then she will pick out everything. You have to, the t-shirt, the underpants, the slacks, the socks, the boots, the belt, the shirt, the vest, whatever, and she'll make you look like a doll. And that won't be the total answer, but it'll be an important.
It's kind of going back to your idea that you feel you believe yourself to be queen bee or king bee. Like if you're dressed in clothes that make you feel confident and beautiful and handsome and give you that feeling, then you can walk into a room and be queen or king bee.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right. Do we have a last one here?
Let's do another one.
Let's do another one. Okay. What are some realistic expectations to have coming out of a breakup recovery-wise, and what are some unrealistic expectations?
Well, we'll hear from our experts first, Rhonda and Kyle.
Kyle, I pass it on to you first.
It's funny. It makes me think of, once when I was very early in my dating career, when I was actually kind of in this contentious relationship where it was very passionate, but hot and cold, and I eventually decided, okay, time to end things. I can't handle it. So I was the dumper, not the dumpy in this scenario. And I remember thinking like, oh, I'm just gonna go, and it's sort of like on my to-do list of things to do, right? I was just gonna go, I had to work, and then after that I was going to go do this breakup, and then after that I was going to go to the gym, and then after that I was going to go grocery shopping, and I was just, and it wasn't going to be a big deal at all, but then after the sort of conversation and the breakup and the it did have quite an emotional toll, and I wasn't able to. I mean, I was able, but I didn't go to the gym. I didn't go grocery shopping after that. I was plagued with doubt and insecurity, and what did I just do, and did I make the right choice, and all these sort of negative thoughts and feelings. And so my expectations about the breakup were very different than what the reality is. I don't think this is actually answering the person's question, but maybe I don't have a good answer to this. I think, true to sort of our model here, people react differently to different situations, and it's how they're reacting to the moment in time with their thoughts. And I think, breakups in general, they can be hard, right? I think obviously we all have had clinical practice here on the podcast. We've seen lots of people who've struggled after breakups. So it's true. Like, you do have some negative emotions and negative feelings, but, I think starting with empathy is a good place. And then
empathy toward yourself.
Towards yourself. Yeah. And then, you get to decide what you want to do and take it from there. And if you need some help, get some help. That's totally fine.
Yeah, I think it's impossible to predict exactly your example, Kyle, when you said, oh, today I'm going to go to the grocery store and then I'm going to break up and I'm going to the gym. But then when you put it into act, when you actually did break up, you saw that, wait, what I predicted I was going to do is not going to work. So I'm going to shift my gears. Yeah. And it's kind of hard to imagine what the expectations are, except, of course, in the long run, you want your expectation to be, I'm going to heal from this and move on and examine my role in it, learn from this experience, and be in a healthier, more fulfilling relationship. I mean, that would be the long-term expectation, and how you get there. Like you said, there's a lot of ways to get there, what we've been talking about today and what you've just said.
Yeah.
I had a colleague who I used to go on some of the Sunday hikes with, and I remember he had just broken up. I think it was actually with his wife, and he kind of raised this question of what's a good policy when you've broken up with someone. And again, I don't like to impose my thinking on others. I like to work through the patient's agenda. But I told him, like, one way to think about it would be to abstain from dating or relationships in general for a month or two. and prove to yourself, maybe using the pleasure predicting sheet, that you can be perfectly happy and fulfilled when you're alone. You can only then go back into the dating arena, because if you're feeling, needy or lonely, you may not have the best dating experiences. And he decided to do that. And I thought he was very, very courageous about it. I admired his decision tremendously. And then after a couple of, he would meet women. He got really good at meeting women. But then if they seemed interested, he would say, I'm not dating for a while. And because I broke up, and, just too soon for me to get back into the dating. And then that paradoxically made women even more attracted to him. And then after
he was unavailable.
Yeah, exactly. And then after a little while, I think it was a couple of months, he then got back into the dating arena, and he must have dated 100 women. He really went gangbusters. And so that was fun to see too. And then found someone and settled down. But I think that's perhaps my most important message is to find self-love, which is partly a decision and partly an experiment. Doing activities by yourself with the pleasure predicting sheet, predict how rewarding they're going to be between 0 and 100, and go out and do them, and then write down how rewarding they are between 0 and 100, and then do other activities with other people and do the same thing, and see which are the most satisfying. And I did that experiment myself on a number of occasions, and I discovered, to my shock, that I could be perfectly happy. I thought it was impossible, but I found I could be perfectly happy when I was alone.
Yeah.
And it was a tremendous discovery. I found, David, you're not a half bad guy to hang out with. To spend time with. Absolutely. And that's been so helpful to me ever since. But again, some people, I've gotten hate mail on this topic, like people get angrily oppose my point of view, and think I'm some kind of an evil monster because I think it's possible to be happy when you're alone. And it is something that's bred heavily into our culture. People who need people are the luckiest people in the world. That's what Barbara Streisand sings. And there is some truth in that. It's beautiful to love people. I love hanging out with you, Kyle, and with you, Rhonda. And I feel so blessed to have had the great opportunity to know two of you on a very personal level during my life. And that's a beautiful thing. But at the same time, I've also had, wonderful, wonderful moments with our cats.
Without us.
And just being alone. I can think of times when I was alone that I became so happy that I could barely stand it, to be honest. And I had to go and sit down and settle down a little bit. So...
this segues into the next question. Do you guys feel that you shouldn't date for a while after getting your heart broken?
Yeah, and that's I guess we've answered that one already. Yeah. So that's number 11 on my list.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll make that the last one. And since I've said my piece already, we'll let you guys have the last word.
I will just add. Well, I guess the point was kind of illustrated by David's story. I think you're perfectly kind of allowed to date if you want to. If that's something you want to be doing, then by all means go for it. But what are your expectations with the dating? Are you trying to just get back into a relationship, so that you can kind of play into this belief that you need someone to be happy, well, then I would suggest maybe it's not the best idea, right? But if you're sort of like, hey, I'm wanting to get back out there, and I'm realizing that relationship wasn't for me, and I think I've got a lot to offer, and I'm gonna, dust off my dancing shoes and, go to the club, and I'm gonna, hang out with people and see who I meet, and have a good time. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think a key piece, like David was just saying, is kind of being able to realize that, hey, I am actually okay by myself, and I don't need someone else to feel good or happy or worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. I don't have anything to add to that. It's a personal decision, and you guys have answered it very beautifully. Do you have to move on from your ex to go back out dating and to go back out?
Are we going to keep going here? Or I see what you mean. Yeah, we still have a few minutes. Sure, we can. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, I thought we had to stop, but yes, we do have a few more minutes here.
Well,
Take number 12. Yep.
Do you have to move on from your ex to go back out into the dating world again and to possibly be in a relationship again? Do you guys feel that jumping from relationship to relationship can be a bad thing? Why or why not?
Okay, I'll let you guys go first.
Well, I'm going to just say that I think that expression, jumping from relationship to relationship, sounds so judgmental, and it just feels like a negative tinge to it. And,
like there's a hidden should statement in there. Like you shouldn't be jumping from relationship to relationship, and maybe some labeling too, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It's a bad thing.
And, just piggybacking on what both said previously, like, are you avoiding spending time by yourself? Are you finding yourself in a relationship where similar patterns or you have similar complaints from your last relationship? Are you repeating patterns that you find unfulfilling or that you dislike? If that's happening, I would take time to pause and heal, just the way you guys have talked about before, and do some pleasure predicting and get to a place where you're enjoying being with yourself, and learn about what happened, learn about yourself, learn about the challenges in this relationship before you move on.
Yeah. Go ahead, David. Kyle. No, go ahead.
I would say, right, it's the first part of this question, you have to move on from your ex to go back out in the dating world again and possibly be in a relationship again. I guess I would sort of question, like, what does being moved on mean? Like, does it mean you never have any thoughts about this person ever again? Well, if that's the case, I don't know. We couldn't really control that, could we? Maybe you'd never go back out on the date if you have a random thought about an ex, and I think you might even be tempted from time to time, depending on what the moment is and what's going on in your life, to want to reach out to this person. But I don't think that necessarily means you can't get back out there and can't go on dates. I think if you're just, totally depressed and pining over someone else, and you're going on a date and all you can talk about is your ex and how wonderful they are and how heartbroken you are, then hey, maybe it's not a good idea to go back out there.
Right.
That poor person is just thinking, get me out of here.
Yeah. Maybe you should, waiting until you're in the place where you feel like you're a queen bee or a king bee is a good place to begin.
Yeah. I often counsel people on the importance of jumping from relationship to relationships, and why it's a good thing. And the reason for that is, again, I'm speaking from the point of view of having treated tremendous numbers of people who had tremendous lack of success in the dating arena, and who were, desperate to find somebody, and then the first person they get a date with, they decide, oh, this is the one, and they put all their eggs in that basket and try to make that relationship work, and pretty soon they'd get rejected. And so I told people, it's great to find someone to date, but then it is very important in most cases to resist the urge to try to get exclusive with that person too quickly, because then you'll just get rejected. But if instead then you also date other people in addition to that person, then suddenly you're what they can't get, because you're interacting with many people. You're not in that desperation position. And then that makes them chase you. And the more people that chase you, the more people will chase you. And then when you have the opportunity to date a lot of people, then you can find somebody who you want to settle down with. Somebody who's attracted to you, who's chasing you, who really wants you, and so that you're in the position of power rather than in the position of desperation. But then once you start to get serious with somebody, and then they start backing off, and trying to to say, I'll let you know at the last minute if I can go out with you Saturday night. They start playing games with you. Then you have to give up that intimacy search and start countering them with a game of your own. So you win that game, and so you have to be willing to go into these two worlds, the worlds of deep love and intimacy, and the world of game playing and manipulation. And you have to know, when to yin and when to yang, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very true. All right.
Well, some of these are a bit repetitive. How do you overcome your trust issues when getting into another relationship after your heart has been broken?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it sounds like you're struggling with some variety of thoughts that, like, you couldn't trust someone else again. I'll just get cheated on again, or I'll get dumped again, or I'll get, or people aren't going to be honest with me or something. I mean, and that can be really challenging to want to deal with. It makes sense that you'd feel kind of anxious or worried, Yeah, I guess, like, the word trust issues kind of gets tossed around a lot these days. Oh, I've got trust issues. Well, I guess I would want to know kind of more about what that means, and what's actually going on. What are you afraid of, if that's actually what's happening?
I asked, I think Judy Idelson, who was a psychologist I worked with in Philadelphia, really neat person. Judy and Roy Idelson were good friends of my wife and myself. But I think I once asked her about trust issues and people who were jealous and paranoid. And it's kind of a mixed thing, because sometimes your trust issues with someone might be realistic, and maybe the person isn't trustworthy. They have a different value system where they're not ready to settle down, and they want to play the field, and you don't. But once you find somebody, then Judy said you can do a cost benefit analysis. What are the advantages and disadvantages of trusting them, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of not trusting them and being jealous and angry and suspicious all the time?
Yeah.
And there's no guarantees in life, but if you thought things through and you have a reasonable belief, and the person has a similar value system that you've talked about being faithful, then maybe you're going to have a much happier life, trusting them and developing a wonderful, loving, joyous relationship than constantly being pissed off and jealous and controlling and paranoid and worried. And also, again, to come back to a point we haven't mentioned on these two podcasts, overcoming the fear of being alone. I don't think I mentioned that.
That's brand new. You've never said that.
but then, if it should break up, that's a sad thing. But then that you can be happy on your own, and that you can find someone else who will be more suitable. So although it's never pleasant to be rejected or cheated on, it isn't the end of the world, because again, only your thoughts and not what actually happens can affect the way you think and feel.
So I'm wondering if you're talking about doing a cost-benefit analysis for just trust in general, like am I open to trusting in general, and then starting to date and finding somebody that you might want to get more intimate and vulnerable and open with, and then doing a cost-benefit analysis of trusting that specific person.
Yeah, a decision. It's a decision on some level, and so those of us who have a tendency to be a bit more paranoid, it's a harder decision. A more dangerous decision than people are naturally trusting, but it's a decision regardless.
Yeah.
Well, that's. Shall we end there?
Yeah. And we haven't covered an awful lot of sexy and cool topics related to this, but this is the end of part 2. And so let us know if you want more podcasts on this topic. We still have, a number of good questions, and you may have questions about relationships or trust or, dating, that you'd like us to cover, and we could do a part 3 at some point in the future, because there's a lot to talk about. But let us know what you think. Maybe you've had enough on this, because we've got tons of great questions to answer in our podcasts on all kinds of topics. But thank you, Kyle, for bringing us this one. It's always a joy to see you and to hang out with you and to get your thinking and your soul on different topics.
Well, thank you so much for having me and being open and receptive to the notion of doing a podcast on, dating and relationships and dealing with heartbreak. I know it's something that's personal to me. It's personal to the patients I work with. And I want to thank Chloe again for bringing a lot of these questions. And thanks to David and Rhonda for answering them and sharing your own wisdom and thinking. I hope people will enjoy it. And if there is more questions or interest in a bonus podcast, maybe we can do number 3. That'd be cool.
Yeah. And in the meantime, if we can put your contact information in this and in the part 1 podcast as well, if people are interested in having some sessions with you on this or any topic related to depression or loneliness or relationship problems or dating issues, would you be open to that if there were people who wanted to come and see you in person at the Feeling Good Institute?
Sure, yeah, that would be wonderful. That'd be lovely. Happy to do that.
And let's just announce then your email, and we'll also put it in the show notes, but some people maybe don't read the show notes. So if someone wants to contact you, how do they do that?
The best way would be just to send me an email, and it's just Kyle, Kyle, at feelinggoodinstitute.com. That's a great way
Kyle to at feelinggoodinstitute.com. All one word, Feeling Good Institute. Kyle, Kyle, at feelinggoodinstitute.com. Well, Thank you, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Yeah, Kyle, thank you so much.
Goodbye. Thank you.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, the director of the Feeling Great Therapy Center. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.